On my 20th birthday, my mom gave me a trash bag and a one-way ticket, told me I was no longer family. I vanished for 10 years. Then one day, I walked into my own funeral. And everyone's faces were priceless. They thought I was dead. But I came back to show them what I'd become. I said, "Miss me. I'm Marceline." You know, most people worry about what their family will say at their funeral. But me? I watched my own mother read my obituary while I was still breathing. They declared me dead, held a church service, erased me from every photo, every memory, and I wasn't even invited. They sold my things, took my inheritance, rewrote the story like I never existed. And the worst part, they thought I'd never come back. But I did. It was an ordinary Thursday evening when my phone buzzed. I was halfway through folding laundry in my tiny apartment on the south side of St. Louis, the local news humming quietly from the TV. I almost ignored the notification. It was from Facebook Messenger. And let's be honest, who still uses that anymore? But then I saw the name, Shayla Boone. I hadn't heard that name in over a decade. My old high school friend, the girl who once snuck me out to late-night bonfire parties behind the soccer field. My thumb hovered over the message Curiosity one. Her message was short. "Hey, is this really you? Thought you were dead?" I blinked at the screen assuming she'd mixed me up with someone else, but then I scrolled down and saw the screenshot she'd attached. A Facebook post, black and white photo of me at 16. Below it in bold letters, "In loving memory of Marceline Cross, our beloved daughter, sister, friend, 1992-2013. My stomach dropped. I stared at the post like it was a bad joke, a mistake, somebody messing around, but the more I looked, the colder I felt. Under the photo was a comment, "We miss her every day. She left us too soon." It was posted by Celine Cross. My sister. No. This couldn't be real. I shot a message back to Sheila. "What the hell is this? I'm alive. Who told you I was dead?" Her reply came instantly. "Your mom. They held a memorial service, a big one at church. I thought you died in a car crash." My hands froze. I read her message twice, then 3 times. The room felt smaller, the air heavier. It was one thing to be disowned, cut out, forgotten. It was another to be buried alive. Before I could even process what I'd seen, another message popped up. "Here, you need to see this. A YouTube link." I hesitated for a second, then tapped play. The video opened with the Cross Family Church logo, the soft of organ music in the background. The camera panned across the crowded pews, familiar faces I hadn't seen in years, neighbors, cousins, my parents' friends, all dressed in black. Then it landed on her. My mother, Verna Cross. She stood at the pulpit composed, graceful as ever. Her voice echoed through the sanctuary. "Today, we gather to remember Marceline, a troubled soul who lost her way. She's gone now, but we pray she's finally found peace." I couldn't breathe. They didn't just cut me off. They declared me dead publicly in front of God and everyone. The video panned to the audience, faces I grew up around, people who used to hand me casseroles at church picnics, who smiled and nodded every Sunday. None of them questioned the lie. None of them looked surprised. I let the video play to the end. My mother's crocodile tears, my father's stiff posture in the front row, Celine's blank stare, the slideshow at the end, a montage of childhood photos of me, my kindergarten graduation, my awkward teenage smile, the last photo of me at 16. They all sat there and mourned a funeral that wasn't real. When the video ended, the silence in my apartment felt suffocating. I sat there staring at the dark screen, feeling something rise inside me. Like grief mixed with rage, grief twisted into something sharp. I wasn't supposed to see this. They'd buried me without a body, without a question, without a fight. For 12 years, I'd worked my way up from nothing, scrubbing toilets and diners, waiting tables on weekends, putting myself through school. I built a life in the shadows because I thought I had no choice, but now I knew. They hadn't just left me behind, they'd erased me. And the worst part, no one, not one single person had said a damn thing. The next hour blurred. I sat there replaying the video, reading the comments under that Facebook post. Cousins I hadn't seen in years writing things like, "She was always so troubled. We tried to help her. Her poor mother. Such a loss." I felt sick. I reached for my phone and typed out a message to Shayla. Why didn't anyone ask? Why didn't anyone look for me? Her reply was gut punch simple. "They said you didn't want to be found." That's when it hit me. They hadn't just killed me in words. They'd made me invisible, and they thought they could get away with it. I wiped my face, stood up from the couch, and walked to the window. The city lights of St. Louis glowed back at me, unaware, uncaring, but I was no longer the girl they buried 12 years ago. If they wanted me dead, fine. I'd come back as their worst nightmare. I stood by the window long after the city lights blurred into one another, long after the funeral video stopped playing in my head. The silence in my apartment pressed on my chest like a weight. I thought maybe if I stayed still enough I wouldn't feel it, that sickening emptiness, the ache of being wiped away. But stillness doesn't save you, it only gives the ghost room to scream louder. Eventually, I walked back to the couch and grabbed my laptop. The glow of the screen felt too bright in the dark, but I didn't turn on the lamp. I didn't want soft light tonight. I wanted the hard cold kind that showed everything. My fingers moved on autopilot. I opened the private folder I'd kept hidden all these years. Tucked away photos, old emails, scraps of memories I couldn't quite delete even when I wanted to. There I was smiling at my college dorm move-in day. Another picture of me and Sheila at a Halloween party covered in glitter, and one I hadn't looked at in years. Me at 19, hair tied up messily, sitting on the porch steps of the house I used to call home. That house. The place where everything ended. I closed my laptop, leaned back, and let myself fall into the memory. It was the night of my 20th birthday, spring of 2012. I had come home late, thinking maybe, just maybe, they'd save me a slice of cake. Maybe I'd get a smile from my father or one of those half-hugs from Celine. Foolish hope. Instead, I walked in to find my mother waiting in the living room, arms crossed, lips tight. She didn't even let me speak. "You've made your choice, Marceline," she said, cold as marble, "and you're no longer one of us." Before I could ask what she meant, she shoved a black trash bag into my arms. Inside, my clothes, haphazardly thrown together, and a one-way bus ticket to Kansas City. "That boy isn't your future. We are, but you've chosen rebellion, so go." My father stood in the hallway behind her, hands in his pockets, eyes fixed on the floor. Celine leaned against the staircase, smirking like she was watching a soap opera. I remember the weight in my stomach heavier than the bag in my hands. "You're really going to throw me out?" I asked, voice cracking. My mother didn't blink. "You made this bed, now lie in it." Outside the night was cold for April. I sat at the curb for a while, the bus ticket crumpled in my hand, wondering if I should tear it up. But where would I go? No one ever comes looking for the daughter they've buried alive. That night stayed with me longer than any scar. But I thought that was the end of it, being discarded, pushed out. Turns out it wasn't enough for them to exile me. They had to erase me. I leaned forward now, opening my laptop again. On impulse, I searched my own name. Nothing. No old photos, no tagged memories, no birthday wishes from years past. My high school graduation post, gone. Photos from our family trip to Yellowstone vanished. It was as if every digital trace of me had been scrubbed clean. I opened Celine's profile out of spite, scrolling through her curated picture-perfect life, posts about family holidays, her big promotion at the bank, the annual church fundraiser, every caption dripping with sugar, grateful for my beautiful family, wouldn't be who I am without them, as if I'd never existed. Scrolling further, I found something that punched me right in the gut, a post from 2014, a photo of my childhood bedroom empty and stripped bare, caption "Cleaning out the past to make room for the future." I recognized the rug rolled up in the corner, the bookshelf my grandfather built, the one I used to line with borrowed library books, gone. That's when I remembered a conversation I'd overheard on the night they kicked me out. Celine's voice muffled through the thin walls. "She brought this on herself. She's not family anymore." At the time, I thought it was just anger. Now I knew it was something worse, something calculated. They hadn't just thrown me out, they'd erased me. The digital graveyard was complete. No trace of me anywhere. Every memory, every photo, every post deleted. A part of me wanted to slam the laptop shut and pretend I hadn't seen it, but the other part, the part they couldn't kill, kept me scrolling, digging, screenshotting everything I could find. I wasn't going to disappear quietly. As dawn began to creep through the blinds, I closed the laptop and sat in the dark for a while, listening to the city waking up outside my window. Then I whispered to myself like a promise, "You wanted me erased, but I'm still here, and I'm coming back." The sun had already begun to rise by the time I stood up from the couch. My apartment was bathed in that soft, hesitant light that only comes at dawn, when the city hasn't fully woken up and everything feels fragile. I hadn't slept. Couldn't. My head buzzed like a radio stuck between stations, thoughts jumping from one to another without landing anywhere solid. The funeral video, the empty digital footprint, Celine's cold words, it all circled endlessly. I moved to the kitchen, made a cup of bitter black coffee, and sat back down at my desk. My laptop stared back at me, waiting. Part of me wanted to shut it, pretend this nightmare had ended with the sunrise, but I knew better. They wanted me erased. I was about to show them how badly they'd failed. Without thinking, I opened an old folder buried deep in my files, documents I hadn't touched in years. Bills, contracts, loan applications, rejection letters, a trail of my life back when I was building it from scratch. That's when I saw it. A loan application from 2018, denied. The reason stared back at me like a slap in the face. Applicant listed as deceased. My stomach dropped. This wasn't a mistake. This was paperwork murder. I scrolled back through other letters, emails, old tax documents. 3 times over the years, I'd been flagged as deceased in records. It had made no sense back then. I assumed clerical error, shrugged it off because I was too busy surviving to question it. But now knowing what I knew, it wasn't a glitch. It was intentional. I grabbed my coat without thinking, left the coffee half finished on the table. The early morning chill of St. Louis hit my face as I stepped outside. The streets were still quiet, city buses just starting their routes. By the time I reached City Hall, the building had only just opened. A clerk at the records desk greeted me with a bored smile asking how she could help. "I need a copy of a death certificate," I said. She raised an eyebrow. "A family member?" I swallowed. "Mine." The clerk blinked but didn't ask questions. She typed my name into the system, fingers clicking quickly against the keyboard. A minute later, she frowned then glanced up at me. "It says here you passed away in 2013. I felt like the floor cracked beneath me. She printed the document without hesitation and slid it across the counter. There it was, my name, my birth date, my supposed date of death, signed and filed by none other than Verna Cross, my mother. The cause of death, accidental, vehicular. The lie, neat and official, stamped with the city seal. I walked out of City Hall holding a copy of my own death certificate, the paper burning against my fingers. It wasn't until I reached the sidewalk that the second punch hit me. The inheritance? Back when my grandmother passed, she'd left something for me. A small trust fund. Nothing massive, but enough to start fresh. I tried to claim it when I was 21, but the lawyer had told me there was no mention of me in the records, that everything had gone to Verna and Celine. I hadn't thought much of it back then. I assumed my grandmother changed her will or maybe my mother made sure I was written out. But now I marched straight to the law office I hadn't set foot in for over a decade. Same gray walls, same stiff chairs, same receptionist with the same tired smile. The lawyer, Mr. Aldridge, barely remembered me at first, but when I told him my name and asked to revisit my grandmother's case, something shifted behind his eyes. "You know," he said, adjusting his glasses, "I always thought it was odd. You were supposed to be listed but your mother provided proof of your death when the estate was processed." He pulled up the old files. There it was again. My death certificate used to legally remove me from the will. They hadn't just declared me dead. They'd stolen everything I was supposed to inherit all because to them I was better off erased. I left the law office with copies of the documents tucked under my arm. My mind moving faster than my feet as I walked back to my apartment. By the time I stepped inside, the city was fully awake. The morning sun glaring through my blinds like it wanted to expose everything I'd uncovered. I laid the documents on my dining table, my death certificate, the loan rejection, the inheritance file, evidence, proof of what they'd done. They'd killed me on paper, but I was still here, and I was done letting them write the story. I pulled out my phone, opened the airline app, and booked a one-way ticket back to St. Louis. It was time to face the family who buried me alive. The plane touched down in St. Louis just before noon, the wheels rattling hard against the runway as if even the ground was reluctant to welcome me back. As I walked through the airport terminal, I kept my head low, sunglasses hiding the storm brewing behind my eyes. I hadn't set foot in this city in over a decade, but somehow everything felt exactly the same and nothing did. I rented a car at the curbside, the clerk barely glancing at me when I handed over my ID. I drove through the streets I once knew like the back of my hand, the skyline of the city looming in the distance sharp against the clear blue sky. It wasn't until I turned onto Kingsbury Avenue that my hand started trembling on the wheel. There it was, the old church, the place where they'd held my funeral. The Cross family church hadn't changed. Same red brick exterior, same white steeple scraping the sky. For a moment, I slowed the car, staring at the front steps where I used to sit after Sunday school, waiting for my father to finish small talk with the congregation. Now those steps were stained with a memory I couldn't scrub clean. I didn't stop. I kept driving past the familiar corner store, past the park where I used to sneak cigarettes behind the bleachers until finally, inevitably, I turned onto my childhood street. The Cross family house sat quietly at the end of the block. Same manicured lawn, same white shutters, the same rose bushes my mother pruned every Saturday morning, except now it felt like a tomb. I slowed but didn't park just enough to let my gaze linger on the front door. The one I used to walk through every day without realizing how quickly it could close behind me forever. As I drove past, memories pushed their way to the surface like unwelcome guests. It was late at night, the night Verna threw me out. I'd been standing in the living room holding that ridiculous black trash bag. My father across from me, Harlan Cross, the man who used to tuck me in with bedtime stories about brave girls who fought monsters. That night, he couldn't even meet my eyes. "Harlan." My mother barked at him, her voice sharp, cutting. "Say something to your daughter." He didn't. He stood there like a statue staring at the floor, shoulders hunched as if he'd shrink into nothing if he stayed still enough.